So for Kill What You Love, explain to me. I've seen this shot in a couple music videos, and you guys do it as well, where the camera's focusing on one thing, then it pans, let's say like 180 degrees, and then someone enters the frame. Is that all set up, or is that post production?
That was all different shots.
Okay.
So it was every time the camera pans, it's a completely different shot that we had to set up. In fact, I think so when she's singing in the video, that was done in a completely different. We did that separately, and then all the stuff with all the other elements that were filmed in a complete. So there were two different shoots almost.
Okay.
We did it all in one day, but we only had Jon for so long, the actor who was in it. So he did all his stuff, and then we filmed her stuff separately with it. So, but yeah, just when you pan the camera, I think that you can cut it so it doesn't really look like it's two different shots. But
nice.
They did that in what was it, movie Birdman, I think.
Yeah,
a lot. So
yeah,
that's where we got the idea for it, because the director, who I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, was talking about that, because the movie's made to look like it's all one shot, but it's done in. There's no way you can do it in one shot. You'd have to do it in separate takes. So
are you guys just consistently trying to like pull knowledge out of films that you see to incorporate into new things?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we both get inspired by we go see movies a lot. In fact, I think we want to probably go see one today, and of course seeing concerts and stuff like that. That's how you get inspired for anything.
Right.
I think is you go and see it, and it might not inspire you directly, like I want to make what they're doing, but just kind of seeing it, and you kind of get the itch to want to create stuff, and so. That's how we've learned to do everything, is just by watching other people and studying what other people do. And so, and I don't know with you, because with you, you've been like, when it comes to like the music part of it, singing, like, she's kind of picked that up on her own, like how to like perform on stage and stuff. And like, I don't know, because it's like I said, we've only done 3 shows, and
kind of just taking it as it comes.
One step at a time.
Just whatever happens.
But I'm sure a lot of it probably comes from you seeing other people on stage.
Oh, absolutely.
And like kind of studying what they do.
Yeah.
Are you starting to feel more comfortable now up on stage?
I am.
Yeah?
There's still a lot of anxiety before every show, but that's just me personally too.
That just means you're excited about it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Well, it's like our bassist Keenan says what he told us for our last show. He says, if you're not nervous before the show, then there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's truth to that.
Keenan's awesome at making me feel a little better. He's kind of like the
he always has like these little
the voice of reason.
Yeah. He always has these like clever adages before we perform. He's kind of like, he's super cool dude. He has like these kind of, he's like the old wise man though of the group.
Yeah, he's like, if you screw up tonight, it's going to be the best screw up that's ever happened. I'm like, yeah. It's going to be great.
So it is always nice to have like a cheerleader in the band, someone who's just pepping everybody up and calming everyone down.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you guys are into horror movies?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's favorite more horror movie of all time?
Oh, man. Yours is it The Shining?
Yeah. That was one that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So we watched it recently, and I don't know if it, I think it's finally starting to show its age a little bit. I think we watched it a lot over Christmas or something. I've seen it like 20 times, but
show its age in what sense?
We were watching it again. I think a lot of the acting is really getting outdated in that movie, but it's still just an eerie movie, because it's not one of those movies that really makes you. I'm not really into movies with like jump scares and like that kind of thing. I like more of like movies that kind of creep you out with like the overall tone of it. And this is one of those movies you still watch it, and there's just the eerie tone to the whole thing, even though like a lot of the acting is really cheesy now when you watch it, but it still has like, it still makes you feel like uncomfortable when you watch it. Like,
that's the type of horror movies I like, the ones that just, it's not necessarily that they're that scary, they just have this eerie tone the whole time. And like, I really love the movie Strangers.
Yeah.
That came out. I mean, because it's realistic. Like something like someone that would be that sadistic, like that could happen to you.
Right.
And then we really enjoyed that movie that came out, I think it was last year, It Follows.
I saw previews for that, but I never watched it because I had a feeling it was going to be really like social media based and real teeny boppery, but it wasn't.
It's not, it's
nice.
It actually didn't get very good reviews and stuff. I don't think a lot of people liked it, but we really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's not a really scary movie. It's like definitely has like a horror tone to it, but it's real hip and has like a hip soundtrack, and I feel like the story as it progresses and what the movie's really about, without giving anything away, is interesting enough to make it. Because I think with a lot of times with horror movies, the problem, you can be a fan of like B horror movies and just like the cheesiness and like that whole aspect of it. But a lot of horror movies, the ones that try to be scary, I think a lot of times miss out on that, or they miss the mark with that, because you're not invested in the characters, you're not invested in the story. So why would you care if anything bad happened to them?
Right.
So whereas this, it follows, I think that you do kind of get invested in the characters and really the overall message of the movie, which is kind of just about mortality. Or impending death. So it makes it interesting, even though the movie's not necessarily scary. It's just an interesting movie, and it's yeah.
Yeah, the whole basis of it is that all of these people know that death is coming for them, but they don't know when it will come.
Yeah.
And it's just them kind of trying to escape it.
Oh, okay, kind of like Final Destination in a sense.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
more of a kind of a more of an obscure like indie version of
Okay.
it.
Yeah, an indie version of
Yeah. It's kind of just a metaphor, I think, in general, for just life in general. Just people are just trying to cheat death and trying to. I think what interesting aspect to it follows for me was the fact that they were trying to like live their lives normally throughout this movie but they couldn't, because this figure that followed them that was going to kill them was always kind of around the corner. So that was kind of, to me, that's what was like the horror part of it, was like not necessarily that they knew they were going to die, because obviously everybody dies eventually, like it was the fact that they couldn't like live their normal teenage lives. Like it kind of like there was this fight between like it being this coming of age story of like these kids like trying to be kids, and then of course like the horror story kind of like creeps into it. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then we saw The Witch 2, which came out last year.
that.
Was it pretty good?
That
was a
might
good
be
one,
my favorite horror film of all time.
Of all time?
It
Okay.
was so great.
That was another one that just wasn't like, it didn't have like a lot of jump scares. It wasn't like, but there was just a kind of a very like dark, eerie vibe the whole time that made you uncomfortable, and just little subtle things that would happen throughout the film that made you just like feel uneasy. And that was
They did a great job of the people that are supposed to love you and keep you safe, of turning them into the exact opposite of that. And it was just
it was like family
interesting.
turning against each other.
It was definitely more of a psychological horror movie. It just really messed with your head.
Yeah, they kind of like, it took like the whole idea of the like satanic possession, or like I guess because it was Satan, that was kind of like this whole like possession kind of story, but being like, because you see all these other movies that are like possession movies, and it's just like somebody's possessed and their eyes roll back in their heads, and then like the house starts shaking, and like, but in this one it's kind of more about like, so this happens, this either Satan or whoever the devil is, somebody is possessing this family because they've been cursed, and so the whole psychological part of it kind of ties into, or stems from them turning against each other.
Yeah, they never really know who is the one causing all of this havoc on their family, and they just slowly start turning against each other.
And blaming each other for like why their family's like in all this turmoil and stuff. And so like that's kind of a thing where you take this family that's supposed to be like this tight-knit group of people, but they all start slowly one by one like turning against each other.
Yeah, they took the like love they had for each other and somehow twisted it. It was you just have to. I would suggest seeing it.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that one for sure. That was a good, and it was shot really well too. It was really really good cinematography, and just I think it did a really good job of pulling you in on that one. So,
do you guys know why they always have horror movies and it's always like a haunted, possessed house? That's what gets me. Every time I see a new horror movie, it's like always something about a house.
It's like, why can't you just like leave the house?
Yeah.
Sort of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
By the time you leave the house, the entity has latched on to one of your family members and it comes with you. That's what always happens.
I think there is something that's supposed to be a little bit more inherently like scary about there being a specific like locale that is haunted, maybe. because you
Always
see
an
it.
Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
Right. That was go back to the same thing.
I think that started with with Poltergeist.
Poltergeist,
actually.
yeah.
I think that was the movie that sparked the whole Indian burial ground thing. But yeah, there's something. I mean, I'm usually more drawn towards the stories about like there being a specific location that's haunted rather than like somebody who's possessed. But I don't know. That's just my personal taste.
Well, now they're moving on to the possessed objects.
Oh, yeah,
With the Ed and Lorraine Warren, like they actually have those paranormal investigators
Right.
that are like famous, but they actually out of their home they have a museum you can go to, and it has all of the possessed objects that they keep in this safe room, and you can go in and look at them.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't keep that in my house. But hey man,
know.
if that's what you're into.
Yeah, well, they say it's to protect the outside world from these objects and the spirits
So it doesn't
being
get in the wrong
released.
hands.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
so The Conjuring was based off of that, and then
Yeah.
what Annabelle was the sequel. I guess it was a sequel. Yeah.
yeah, and then
Was about
they
the
just
doll.
had a new one come out a couple months ago. Did I see it with you?
No, you saw it with your parents.
Okay.
Her parents are also big into horror movies.
Yeah.
Oh nice. Horror
They-
family.
Yeah.
You guys have Netflix? You guys
Yeah.
have you guys seen Creep
Oh,
with Mark Duplass?
I did. I started watching it. I fell asleep not because I didn't enjoy it because it was like late at night.
Yeah.
But I didn't end up finishing that one. I like Mark Duplass's movies in general. I think he's done a lot of really like cool stuff.
Yeah. And that movie was one of the first movies I actually liked. That was like the found footage. I didn't know that was a whole genre. I
Yeah.
guess after Blair Witch.
It is kind of now. They're doing a
Yeah.
lot of them.
I'll have to check that out. I haven't even heard of it.
It's pretty good. It's like one of the psychological ones where you're like, okay, yeah, this dude. So the idea is he gets a guy to come in and kind of film his last days because he thinks he has cancer, or he says he has cancer.
Okay.
And then they kind of go through a whole spiel of things where towards the end, and it's like, it's not gory. There's not really a lot of jump at you kind
Yeah.
of stuff. It's just like, oh, someone can be this fucked up. Like it could
Just like
happen.
a really, yeah.
Yeah. And then they incorporate like, okay, how do you find this guy? Well, we want something like Craigslist, right? So something that we all do every day.
Yeah.
That could really actually happen.
And I think that you have to do that nowadays to really scare people because like we're so exposed to like without getting like too heavy and stuff. We're so exposed to violence, but not just like cinematic violence, but like real violence nowadays.
Right.
And we see it all the time. And so like going and seeing a horror movie is like nothing, in like this kind of Western culture. So like now we have to like make movies like stark and like realistic in order to get any reaction out of people. And I mean, I can imagine watching some of the movies that are out now like 20 years ago. I mean, people would be shitting their pants.
Yeah, it's
like,
true.
It's just because they're so much more realistic and like death scenes now. Like people, it's like
All of the Saw movies.
Or like Hostel.
Yes.
Oh man.
That one scared me.
Well, going back to The Witch. I mean, there's a scene where somebody in the film dies, and you watch him die, but it was like this is how people really die. It's not like it's not like a like dramatic like it's a realistic like death scene. It's and it's really hard to watch.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where we're at now, I guess.
That's a good point.
You become
People are-
desensitized,
Right.
essentially. So
Yeah, with social media and everyone has cameras now on them, they can record anything.
yeah.
That's a real good point.
I mean, there's a lot of transparency with everything. I mean,
Yeah.
So you have to kind of like keep getting more extreme, I guess, in order to keep people's interest up. So
We'll eventually make a horror movie.
oh yeah, that's because we want to do a short film eventually, but we have so many ideas for things. I mean, it's gonna be one of those things we're gonna have to really like sit down and like work through some of our ideas. But I think we want to eventually do a short horror movie, and they've got a lot of good film festivals out there now that support it. There's one in KC now that does it. I don't know. Saw something about it a while ago. So
Yeah, they got a couple of different film fests here.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. So what is it about horror that really kind of draws you guys in, piques your interest? Just deranged individuals like myself?
Maybe.
I like the style that goes into it, like the atmosphere and all that stuff. I mean, it's not necessarily for me like kind of horror fantasy, but like a lot of the stuff that we did was like with film noir and like the 80s kind of vibes and stuff, because I always like 80s movies and like the way that 80s movies look, like the atmosphere and the feel, like that whole atmosphere that goes into it. Nowadays with horror movies, like I said, they're more stark and they're more real and they're more like, but back then they had a lot more of a fantasy element to it.
Theatrical, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think that's cool. I think especially when you tie it into music and tie in like this whole, with Shadow Rabbits, we want to do like kind of a whole like visual music package, kind of taking the elements from those older movies, because they have more of a stylistic aesthetic to them. I think that's kind of I want to bring that kind of into what we do. And I think you look at like a lot of musical projects nowadays, going back to social media and there being a lot of transparency. There is most bands nowadays, there isn't really kind of this wall put up in between the band and the audience. You kind of see what you get. They post on Instagram about like what they're doing all the time. It's like, hey, we're at In-N-Out Burger before the show or something. So you kind of get like a very like intimate like look into all these bands and who they are. Now, if you go back into like the 60s and stuff, all those bands, it wasn't like that. There was kind of like this image of who they were, and it probably wasn't who they really were. They probably did put on sort of like a front, but you didn't have the access back then. And I think that that's something that we kind of like the idea of. I don't know if it's achievable anymore, but kind of creating an image of, like, this isn't really who we are. We're not really like these people, but the way we portray ourselves in social media, or maybe just kind of being more of an act, or like more of like a theatrical type of deal.
Yeah,
And
actually, a lot of bands that I've been talking to have been talking about making that shift from being transparent to kind of going back to the way it was before, where there is kind of that little mystique, right? Because that keeps it more interesting for the listener.
Yeah, you don't want reality.
Yeah.
You
don't want to really know. Yeah.
But then
you want everything to be greater and intriguing.
I read this interesting article. God, I think it was about like is it AV Club that does it, or Consequence of Sound? They do this like thing. It's totally awful, and I hate reading it. I feel terrible, but it's like songs we hate or something like that. So it's like they take like an artist and they're like, explain like a song that you hate, and it was John Vanderslice talking about, I think, like Third Eye Blind or something. And it was like a personal experience that he had with like the band or the singer of Third Eye Blind. I don't know the guy's name. But there was an interesting point that was made in this whole like rant that he went on about it. And it was about how, back in the day, like everybody all these musicians, they were all assholes, and everybody knew they were assholes. And like nowadays, he says, because of all the transparency and all the, there's always a camera on you. Everybody's like nice all the time. It's like, oh no, we're so humble, and like so like all these bands you talk to or you see like tweeting and like on all these interviews, they're just all like the nicest people, and they're so nice and sweet. And he's like, I don't think that's changed. I don't think people just inherently became nicer. I just think it's just the way that we've like focused, like we shifted, like, or there's more of attention like placed on like that aspect of the band now. So now people like want to brand themselves as being like good guys,
right?
And they're on the opposite spectrum. I mean, there's some bands that do the opposite. They intentionally act like assholes because that is kind of what they're going for.
Right.
Like they want to be that kind of band.
Kanye. Yeah, it is interesting. And at the same time, you got to be very careful too, right? Because if you put up kind of that mystique or you play that certain character, people are just automatically going to assume that that's who you are.
Yeah.
And so you got to play that really, really carefully. And what I think is really interesting now with social media and all that transparency is the way that marketing is coming in and being completely invisible, right? So they're paying all of these YouTube tastemakers and all these people who have tons of followers to tweet out about their stuff. Yeah. And you're just like, okay, I didn't know that's coming from a marketer, or is that coming from you as a person? So I think that's a really interesting, kind of depressing, but very interesting, because you even see like articles, like blog posts getting written by respected journalists, but they're getting paid to write something for this company so they sell more products.
Yeah.
Even the whole Pokemon Go thing, right? That whole phenomenon.
Yeah.
Now companies can pay people to place Pokemon in their shops, so you can go try to find a Pokemon.
Hear about that. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, that's the way it's going, man. This whole big data thing is all getting paid for. Like Kansas City is now a smart city, so they have like meters. IEDs down in the city. They have meters and different things that are reading various points of data. And all that gets funded by advertising.
Yeah.
It's like millions of dollars to put that in and commission it. And there's a lot of companies that came together to commission that. But at the end of the day, who ends up paying for it is all the marketing people. They'll come in and they'll sell all your data.
Yeah.
All the data that they get, they'll sell it off, and they'll say, okay, so I'm going to walk by this store and I'm going to get a push notification they're having a sale, right? So you're going to go into that store. So it's extremely deceptive how marketing's working. But
yeah, and I mean, that's, you have to come to that realization too. If you're in a band and you're making music, is that your whole existence is basically to make somebody else money. You're an advertising tool. And 20 years ago, there was the whole people were still being called sellouts and all that stuff for it. But nowadays, I think it's just it's such a blanketed, there's no escaping it. So that's kind of the whole point of your existence in a sense. I mean, obviously, we still do this stuff because we enjoy doing it. And that's the only reason why we did it, telling the story of how we became Shadow Rabbits. We wouldn't have done it unless we just wanted to do something. We never went into it with the intention of eventually, marketing our music or licensing it, which is something we'll probably eventually do, or at least try to do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you just have to eventually come to that realization, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, you're right. It's a very slippery slope, because now people are excited when they get on commercials, because commercials are going to, like Jeep, they break bands.
Yeah.
Right? Where before, you're exactly right. Oh, that band sold out. Why would they do that? Why would they let their music be used like that? Or like that big fuss about the Star Trek movie where the Beastie Boys, they've never licensed, and they've always said, we're never going to license our song. And then it was in that Star Trek trailer, and everyone was losing their shit over it. And it's like, guys, there comes a point in time when this has to pay the bills, you got to do stuff like that.
Well, because it's your job now.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing is, especially when you're in a band, people don't realize how demanding it is. We've played 3 shows, but if we wanted to do this and make money off of it, we'd have to tour.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to work our normal jobs.
Yeah, you have to make money some way.
Yeah, so. And that's how you make your money, is doing it through licensing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because you can't really make, unless you're like a mid-major sort of band, you can't really make that much money off of touring or anything like that anymore.
Yeah, not enough to support yourself.
No, for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's become a full-time job now if you want to really pursue this type of thing. So, I mean, you just kind of have to accept the fact that you're going to be a marketing tool, because that's the only way to really make money.
Right. Yeah, I go down to South by Southwest, and it's just Doritos and Mountain Dew everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
We do want to go to South by next year. She's never been. I've been a couple times, but we just kind of go for fun.
It's an experience.
It's a wild experience.
I remember showing up on a Thursday, and then I was like, wow, there's a lot of people here. And then Friday it doubled. I'm like, there's no way.
It gets worse.
Yeah, the Saturday, I'm like, holy shit. It's like the whole state of Texas just in these 5-6 blocks in Austin.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's something I think you have to kind of see at least once.
Yeah.
Experience at least once.
You were hit by a car there.
Wait.
Were you?
No, that was at Wakarusa.
Oh, okay.
I was hit by that music festival used to have in Lawrence.
Yeah.
Years ago. I was hit by a car.
Hit by a car?
Yeah, somebody was on something and they were driving, and I was drunk. I mean, I wasn't super drunk, but I was walking with my friends, and we were just in the campground. Somebody was driving and just hit, rolled up on their windshield.
Holy shit!
And I was totally fine. I rolled off, I hit the windshield and rolled off, totally it was an action movie.
It's probably good that you were drunk, so you're relaxed.
Just whoa!
Anyone catch that on film?
Yeah. And then I got up, and they got out of the car, and I knew they were severely intoxicated, because you could tell. And then they were freaking out. They're like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? They're freaking out that I needed medical attention. And I got up, and I was yeah, I'm okay. I actually feel fine. I was walking around, and I was and we're all laughing. I can't believe I survived that. And then of course the next morning I wake up, and I'm just my body is just I couldn't move, in severe pain. So I wasn't okay, but I thought I was at the time. And,
yeah.
Didn't break anything, but
I've only seen one person get hit by a car. He was going across a crosswalk, and this car came up to make it was a right turn, yeah. And this guy, the car wasn't even going very fast, but it just took this dude and he flew.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then he landed. It's he was embarrassed, and he got up and kept walking. I'm like, dude, just got hit by a fucking car.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
He was probably in shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's scary. I think as long as you don't go under the car, I think you're usually you're gonna get. I mean, it's the car's not going too fast, but you don't want to go under the car. You just want to make sure you get on over the hood.
Just
that's
leap when you see it coming at you.
Yeah. Try to hit the hood, because it has a little give to it.
Right.
Tips on getting hit by a car.
Yeah, this podcast is turning into survival tips, especially when you're at music festivals and people are driving drunk.
Be safe out there, kids.
Right. Wow. So so you guys are thinking about doing another music video you're talking about?
Yeah, we've been planning one for a while.
For a song off the EP?
No, we're moving on past that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's a new one. I actually wrote it right after Bowie passed away
Oh,
about him, and it's very strange. And we came up with this really cool idea for it. I think it's gonna take a lot of work. It's gonna be a lot more costuming than, because we're gonna have a whole group of people in it, and I don't know. We don't want to give too much away, but I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
If it comes out the way we're envisioning.
Yeah, if we ever get on, this one's been, because the other music videos were like, okay, let's do it. We go out and do it, but this one's like, because there's so much planning and stuff going into it, it's going to be a lot. We're kind of stalling a little bit, but we also want to record music. We're recording a bunch of new music at the same time. So, and I think there's a part where we want to kind of keep it all a little cohesive and have kind of like an idea, sort of like we did with the last EP, but it's
a lot on our plate in the coming months.
Yeah, we should hopefully have something out. We wanted to release something this year, but I don't know if we're gonna wait to release like another EP or album or something yet. We don't really know how we want to do it, but we might wait a little bit. But we're gonna still try to produce content too. We have ideas for, like, we were talking about doing more like acoustic kind of, like you see a lot of like YouTube videos where they're doing like acoustic covers and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe doing something that's like that, but maybe like a play on idea of it, like kind of take it a different direction, get a little more creative with it or something. So we've had a few different ideas for ways we can still produce content, because kind of going back to the whole thing with the social media, like we don't really use it as social media as a tool to like let people like know what's going on in our lives, because we have our own personal like Facebook accounts and stuff for that. So really like the Shadow Rabbits social media stuff is just content only really at this point. So we're just kind of trying to find ways to generate as much of it as possible so it doesn't just kind of go stagnant.